Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of the Versus Stars podcast third season. Hi, my loyal listeners. Thank you for your continued support. It's an amazing episode because Jeff Russo returns to the mothership to discuss the score to Star Trek Discovery Season 5. Now come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hi, Mr. Russo. Thank you so much for coming to the Versus Stars podcast.
Hello.
I should say welcome back to the show. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. I think you were actually the first composer I had on my on the show when I restarted it. So I want to thank you so much for doing it.
It's a pleasure.
So when we last talked, we talked I think with season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. Now you just completed, or the show just completed for Star Trek season 5. So have you had the chance to reflect upon the last 5 seasons?
Have I had a chance to reflect? I have reflected, I think, at the end of every year. I think that this was a particularly strange way of ending because we didn't know we were ending until we were about 2/3 of the way through the season.
Hmm.
And then they went back and shot some more footage to really give us a fitting ending. And it was surprising, and then sort of we all had to reset, like what we were feeling.
Hmm.
But I definitely have had time now to reflect on it, and it's been such an incredible experience, being involved in the Star Trek universe to begin with is pretty incredible for me as a Trek fan since I was a kid. So, but particularly with the sort of reinvigoration of the brand,
Hmm.
with Discovery and then Picard and working on Picard and then writing the theme for Star Trek Strange New Worlds and working with Nami on that and continuing my involvement with Star Trek has been just such a thrilling adventure for me.
Hmm.
So, I just love it. I just love writing the music and I love telling good stories and this um this brand tends to do that.
Hmm. Now, an interesting about the music is that you kind of have had 4 years of building upon ideas from a musical perspective, themes, characters, things of that nature. Since you said that you only knew halfway through that this season was going to be the last one, did that change how you approached it musically, knowing where you came from and where you were going to end?
It didn't really change it. I mean, we were telling the story, the progenitor story, right? We were telling the story, the map, the trying to find the progenitors and the beginnings of the universe and all this stuff. Um, that was never going to change, right? So we were always telling that story. So I didn't really have to adjust that. I just sort of had to adjust my own emotions, right?
Hmm.
Um, the coda that we shot that tells the story of where we end up, where Burnham ends up, where Book ends up, and how and what happens to Discovery and how that connects to our short trek that we did from the season 1 of the shorts. Um, you know, that was a really interesting thing for me because I did sort of write that. I wrote that all at the same time because I found out before I had written episode 10. So as I was doing episode 10, I had known where I was going to have to take it and what I was going to have to do at the end of the show. So it didn't really affect what I was doing.
So, thinking about, again, going back to Mr. Russo of 5 years ago of Star Trek Discovery from where you are now, were there surprises to where the music has taken you with this series? Like, did you think I was going to develop this kind of idea musically, but by the end, I really felt it musically, it became this?
There's a surprise every episode, right? There's something different for me um, to find in every episode of the show. So, there wasn't anything particularly different from season to season. I sort of look at each season as a story in and of itself, but also trying to connect us all together because of this group of characters. And
Hmm.
as characters sort of come and go, they different motifs get introduced and then taken out. But generally speaking, I would say there hasn't been like any surprise for me from the difference between season 1 and season 5. Now, I can hear a difference in the way I wrote in season one as I do in season five because I've grown as an artist, I've grown as a composer, and I have looked at each season as its own thing while trying to connect it. So you can kind of see how I progress. You can see how we as filmmakers have progressed and like how we tell the story, how we told the story in season one versus how we tell the story in season five, which is, you know, we're better at what we do maybe because we're a little more experienced and we've done this, and we're trying to find our way through to the next thing. Um, so I don't know if that's surprising. I kind of feel like most episodic serialized dramas do that over time. They grow, you know.
Hmm. And I think maybe this is probably debatable, so feel free to debate it with me that more than almost any other Star Trek, Michael Burnham is the star of the show. Like usually, I mean, some of them have been ensembles in the past, but more than almost any other, Burnham is the focal point of the entire series. I mean, Saru has a big part, some have a big part, but I feel like Michael Burnham really is she is the star. I mean, like singularly focused of the Star Trek at some level. Having seen her and approaching her story for over 5 years, which aspects of Michael Burnham musically did you want to explore in the fifth season?
Well, in the fifth season, I think she's really come into her own as captain and as the leader of this group and the leader of this ship. Um, you say that she's been the focal point and she's the star. I would say that she's the vehicle
Hmm.
through which all of the characters get to be their own stars
Okay.
and their own leaders, right? Yes, we always sort of end up back with Burnham, and it really does tell the story of her journey, but it's also the journey of all of these characters on the ship, which is why I kind of felt like, you know, it's not just Star Trek something, right? It's Star Trek Discovery, and that's because it's really all the stuff that's happening on that particular ship and with that particular crew. So, I do believe what you're saying is valid. It does feel that way, but I kind of look at it as more of an ensemble piece, and it's really about how she connects with all of the other characters, and through music is how I sort of try to play that, right? Like I've been doing that since season one. Like really, her connection to all the other characters is my sort of muse in how I look at the score.
No, I think that there's a great moment, and I can't remember the episode, but it's a great moment in the fifth season where Michael Burnham of season five bumps into Michael Burnham of season one. Like I can't remember the episode number that happens in, but there's that great moment where they kind of meet each other, and you really get to see the personality difference, how much she changed as an individual from season one to season five. She has become more a captain that she kind of has become more warm of as an individual. Um, and from when you think of her themes, how did has your writing of her themes demonstrated that over these last few years?
Well, like I said, she's really grown into herself. Like the character has sort of become more comfortable with her place on the ship. In season one, we open with her being arrested. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like she was on her way to jail. Um, and the really, really, I think what I tried to do is to follow her journey for her, just in terms of what I was playing for her, following her journey,
Hmm.
right? In how she grows as a human. I think that in the first season, we really did play a lot about her Vulcan side, and I think that became less and less of a part of her in terms of how her character was interacting as we went into the following seasons. So that kind of took a back seat how I was trying to play her Vulcan part side. Um, so I didn't do that as much in season two. I did it even less in season three, and certainly not at all in seasons four and five. Um, So there was that. But generally speaking, I think, her thematic material became less cold. Her thematic material became warmer and a little more secure with itself and confident. And I think that I tried to really show that in music.
And I think another brilliant thing that Discovery did is that in season one, once again, it was the past prior to the original Star Trek series of 1968, I think. And then during around third season, they moved far into the future. Uh, does that did that impact or influence how you approach the sound as well, considering that we moved that far away from what was the original series into a brand new future for these characters?
I made a decision not to do that. I made a decision to just our music is our music. It didn't matter if we were 1,000 years in the future or not. I thought like there if I were to have tried to do that, it would have been me trying to, be too on the nose,
Mm,
right? Like, well, what am I going to do? Try and change the score to match we're 1,000 years in the future? The stories are vaguely and generally similar.
mm.
They're stories of connection between people, humans and non-humans. It's adventure in trying to find out the unknown. And I think that how the filmmakers sort of framed those stories around it. Um, it was interesting. We had different characters, different types of characters, and then we also had some of the same types of characters. So I didn't really need to make significant changes to that.
And I think a new character that were introduced this season that were fantastic is Maul and Locke.
Yeah.
And I think what was kind of interesting is that a lot of their character is perception. If you, from their perspective, they're deeply in love. They're, looking at the future. From perspective of the Federation, they're these hardcore villains. When you're thinking about writing music with them, do you view it from more their perspective, who they are to each other, or who they are from perspective of the Federation?
No, they were sort of standalone, right? We sort of wanted to treat those two characters something that was not connected to the Federation, really not connected to that musically, and I gave them their own sort of motific material, and I was sort of looking at that as as outsiders. As the season continued, I started to bring Maul closer to the Federation, right? Um, and as the entire storyline sort of changed and it became more about a race to save the life, for her, it was it was important for me to sort of integrate a more emotional connectivity for her to Burnham.
Now, an interesting thing is the album was not released until I think it was released after the 10th episode, or it has not released quite yet, the
We have
fifth
not, I
season.
have not even put it together yet.
Okay, so obviously the thought of or some thought is that it was not released because of idea potential for spoilers in the music or musical spoilers or in the titles. When you think about Mullen Locke, you have so many spoilers with these characters potentially. You have Locke is a Breen, turns out, and who they are. The fact that you said that Maul is going to, as you change her sort to being for protecting of Locke versus through each other. When you're thinking writing the music, especially in the earlier episodes, was there concern of spoiling what we're going to find out about them later on?
Well, no, I take good care to help tell the story the way the story is meant to be told. And I don't really, titles don't typically spoil anything. I tend to not title anything with anything spoiler-esque. Occasionally, I get a call from CBS like, maybe you could change this title because it's a little spoilery, but obviously that won't happen this time because I'm not even ready to put it out yet.
So, another great character is that you didn't introduce, but kind of felt like they got introduced in Star Trek. In Discovery, even though I mean technically not, they're in Deep Space Nine, but the Breen. I mean they do appear in Deep Space Nine, but we do get the first, I think, really true look on what it is to be a Breen or what the Breens are like. So you kind of had the opportunity to musically voice them for the first time, really in Star Trek. What was that experience like for you?
Well, I mean, new characters always sort of fun to write some new type of thematic material. It had a little bit more of a militaristic vibe, and as you know, the Breen are pretty militaristic in that way, and that's always fun for me. It's always sort of like interesting to look at a new character and see like how I can write music that really does reflect what these characters are, but not come too far out of what I do
Mm.
for the for the show.
And like, and I think it was just brilliant. And I think that because not only I think the Breen are just fascinating characters to begin with, and after you're watching Discovery, you think to yourself, where have these characters been for these last this many years of Star Trek that they've not been explored the way they are in that show? And I think they're brilliant. Um, Going with the idea that Locke, we do find out is Breen. Did you want to make a musical connection between Locke, the sound for Locke musically, and the sound for the Breen?
It was more like trying to keep the two of them connected than connecting him to the Breen, because the idea was that he was separating himself from them anyway.
Mm.
So I didn't need to misdirect, and I also didn't need to connect them.
So from as you said about the Breen, you said they're more militaristic. Is that when you created the concept, their themes, was that your main focus of them as a species?
I wouldn't say that that was my main focus. I would say that that was something I thought about. So
Okay.
it was a little more, maybe a little more aggressive in the percussion, maybe a little, you know what I mean? Like there are little bits and pieces that I get to do to give little hints as to the way people are, the way characters are.
And I think one of the things I do love the first episode, well, yeah, I'm not going to be able to. I don't know the name of the song or the score, but Tilly, you created this great first episode for Taylor's like this like whimsical kind of it was like comical sound around the scene where she's with her quarters. Can you kind of go into a little bit about developing the sound for Tilly in
I
that?
mean, Tilly's sound really developed in season one, uh, where it was really important to have a lightness around that character without trying to be funny. Like it
Mm,
wasn't, even though some of her lines are delivered deliberately for a laugh, deliberately for a lightness. I didn't want to play comedic music, but I also didn't, she needed to have some lightness and some joviality
mm.
to her because her character is like that. Her character is sort of bubbly. So that's always been something that I've been developing for, from season over season.
I really do think she's a great character. It was there a particular character that as you're writing it you found just a lot more fun to write than you thought it would be? Because I feel like Tilly is a character that is extremely fun, but I don't know if there's another character that maybe grabbed your interest the most and thought this is a more fascinating character to write music
Well,
for.
I've always had a lot of fun writing for Giorgio. Obviously that ended in season three.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, so yes, season one, not so much so I did, in season one when I got to do the mirror universe stuff, and then really introduce music for Giorgio, in season one. But in season two, it really became much more important
Mm,
for me to give her her own feeling. And in season three too, and one of the big moments for me was writing the Goodbye Giorgio in
mm,
season three, because it was really emotional, and yet I couldn't really say goodbye forever because somewhere in the back of my head I was like, she's got to come back sometime,
mm.
somewhere. Maybe it'll be, and of course I was right. But I would say she's a lot of fun. I mean, look, it was all good. Writing for Lorca in season one was a lot of fun too, because I always find like interesting characters that are nebulous as to whether they're bad or good, and you don't really know. That's fun for me because I get to play both sides of it.
Mm.
And that's always fun. But I do really enjoy writing stuff for Tilly too. Tilly's a lot of fun to write for as well.
At least I do love a lot of the Discovery characters. I say Tilly's one of my favorites, and Cerebral is another one of my favorites. But since you did bring up JoJo and her returning, I do need to ask, put you on the spot a little bit. So Section 31 movie is coming out. Are you handling the music, or are you part of, at all of the music for Section 31? You are? You are you the primary composer? Because I know Picard, well, not Picard, Strange New Worlds, you are
Yeah,
part of, but you're not the primary composer.
Strange New Worlds, I wrote the main title and I wrote the end title, and then I basically just answer questions for Nami, who writes all the score. That's basically they call that supervising composer, and that's fine. I'm involved in the spotting sessions and making the notes on the music and sort of making sure, but make no mistake, Nami is a fantastic composer, and she is writing the score for that. I no on Section 31, I will be writing the music.
Is there anything you can tell us about for music of what that we're going to be excited about? Like I know it's Giorgio. Do we know musically, or kind of are we continuing from something from the prior discovery? There's something brand new that we're going to hear.
I would tell you, but then I would have to break this computer. I, I am under very strict tell no one anything orders.
I'm gonna poke just one more time, if that's okay. It's a minor poke, so I'm gonna poke. Can you just say, is the music already completed for Section 31, or you still work, or is being worked on, or is going to be worked on in the future?
Section 31 is in process.
Okay. Sorry, I just want. I'm just curious. I'm really curious what's gonna happen with that one. So I'm gonna bother you again when that one's released. Talk about more music. To going back to Star Trek Discovery Season 5, I think one of my favorite moments of the entire, almost maybe the entire series, maybe because I'm just a book nerd. I love the archive, the great the library they showed. That is such a
Beautiful.
beautiful moment.
Understood. Yeah, I totally agree.
So, what can you tell us about how you approached, especially the first introduction of the archive? Because, like I said, it's just there's such majesty and an exciting just look to that place. And something like as a book nerd too is like, oh my God, I could live there. So, can you kind of approach how you musically created the sound for the archive?
I think majesty is the word that I would use as well. I think that you hit the nail right on the head. It's really we open into the archive, and it's such a majestic set piece. Um, I sort of felt like, oh, okay, this is how I have to approach it, from a very majestic standpoint. And we did.
I think one thing, and um, I'm pretty sure I was hearing correctly, 'cause, just from watching it, there in the score for the archives, you added the harmony of the human voice, in the background. I'm pretty sure that's what I was hearing. Can you kind of dive into the use of the human voice in the moment? Because I know the archives to me is all of history, all of all the aliens of everything that's been recorded that is known. And I do feel like there's a connection between that and your use of the human voice harmony in the music for that. Am I correct?
And I tend to use whatever is at my disposal. It made sense to me to do that because there was a real being. I wanted it to be the sound of a being, not of an
Mm.
instrument, in the background of it. Because, like you said, it's like everything from all recorded history. So it's all beings that are known. And all I have is human. So it seemed to make sense.
And I think it might be an interesting challenge to be the composer for Star Trek this Discovery, or I mean, almost maybe any Star, but Star Trek Discovery is that the scope of the ideas they're dealing with and the potential scope of where they go to, like to the archive, the progenitors, kind of a world is massive. Is it how much of a challenge is to try to reach the moment of what they're showing you
You
and talk
know,
about?
I don't really look sideways at that, right? I kind of feel like I have to be in the moment, and I have to feel like what I'm seeing is what I know. Um, I get what you're saying. Like there are all these possibilities, and that I think ends up being in the fabric of the music, but I can't rely on that. And I also can't be overwhelmed by that because I could get very overwhelmed very easily by that
Mhm.
idea. So I do try to just limit what I'm thinking about other than what I'm seeing and what the story is that's in front of me, not what is possible
Mm.
outside of the world I'm thinking about. But you're right, like the archive, really does give you the sense that this world, this Star Trek world that we create is enormous, and what on earth could be, out there. It could be this huge thing. I can't address that in the music for Discovery. The music for Discovery is the music for Discovery.
Right, and like I was just thinking, like what they're dealing with, like the progenitors for that they are the creators who they introduce, or they're actually creators for the creators, and then they go back. I'm like, my God, I mean, just the sheer momentous revelation of that in within Star Trek is so big.
Yep.
It's amazing, and it's interesting that you're able to capture those moments so well, and something that to me would be overwhelming, just like the very concept of
I
it.
mean, yeah, I mean, if you think about it in that way, it can be very overwhelming, but I have to put blinders on and just do what I do.
Approaching the final episode, I know there, I don't know if we should be a little careful of spoilers because, I mean, but sorry, I mean, it's been released, but I don't know if we should be a little careful for people who may want to, have not gotten to the last episode maybe yet, so maybe we'll dance, tread lightly. But when you're dealing with the last episode, you're dealing with the end of Discovery, the end of the season, the revelation, with the progenitors of the show as well. There's a lot going on in that last episode that needs to be wrapped up. What do you want to? What kind of choices did you make to kind of focus on how you wanted to wrap up, literally all that massive storyline?
Well, it's really all about release, right? It's really all about release and relief. And, when you wind something up that's as complicated as this particular season was from a story perspective, like the
Mhm.
map and how to get from point A to point B and then from point B to point C and who's involved and all this stuff. It's like all I can really think about is the emotional relief that people feel when things get wrapped like that. And that is what uh that's how I approach it. It's like I'm always wondering what a character's feeling, and that's what I'm playing. So when I'm talking about Burnham at the end, it's like, what is Burnham feeling, and how do I express that in music? What is
Mm.
Maul feeling, and how do I express that in music? What is Tilly feeling when it's all sort of wrapping up for her at the end? It's like trying to figure out what that all means to these characters and how to express that in music. That's all I can do. I don't really try to think about specific storylines and how am I going to end this motif? How am I going to end this piece of music? Because to me, the motific environment and the thematic environment is sort of secondary
Mm.
to the telling of the story. The story is the most important thing, which is why I stick with the emotional context of the characters. That's more important to me than going back and playing that one motif that you hear, unless that's going to have some very significant emotional basis, which sometimes it does. And when you get to the end of episode 10, you hear all of the music in that I've created in over the last 7 years. It's like I didn't deliberately try to put everything in, but as I was sitting there writing it, it just sort of flowed out like, oh,
Mm.
okay, this theme. Oh, and this is that. And well, of course I have to do this thing because you know what I mean? And I was fighting with myself, trying to edit myself because I was struggling to just stay with the characters. And in the end, I think I did that.
I think the score is brilliant. I love the Star Trek Discovery music. I think you did a wonderful job with it. You did say one thing that I'm going to have to kind of push on a little bit. You said you have not quite organized the album yet, so it can be released. For the listeners, when can we expect our ability to actually purchase the music from season
Well,
five?
I'm gonna have it all organized by next week. And then it's up to the record labels. So I'm assuming like soon, like in a month or two.
But we are going to get it.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Okay.
without it.
Because it'd be hard to have the music and then actually be able to buy it. Is all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, yeah. It will be a significant release of new material from season 5.
Um, can you reveal the track count?
I can't because I don't know it.
Okay. I mean, but we're looking at everything from the show that you made music
Well,
entering it.
I can't put everything from the show into a release because then it would just be there's just too much music.
Gotcha.
So I will make selections from each episode. I might skip an episode. I don't know. Like I have to really go through it. It's a lot of music to go through because we do a lot of music for the show. And I just have to figure it out.
So,
They've been bugging me for it. They've been bugging me. They've been saying we got to put it together. We got to put it together. And I'm like, okay, okay. I mean, it's a lot, and there's been so much other stuff going on. I'm getting prepped for this other track that I mean, this is a lot. This is a lot.
um, is it safe to say, or am I wrong to say that Section 31 is your next project?
Um, well, I can't honestly, I don't know what the next project is that you'll see
Okay.
because things get released at different times. I'm working on a number of different things all at once. And when I do that, sometimes something I'm working on right now won't come out until next year.
Hmm.
Sometimes something I'll start working on in like a month will come out 2 months after that. So it'll come out before the thing that I finished before it. So
Hmm.
it's difficult to know.
Can you give some information on what some of these other projects are?
Sure. I'm working on Alien, which is an 8 episode series for FX.
Oh, very
Um,
cool.
Noah Hawley directing and producing. And I'm working on a film with a director named John Avnet right now called The Last Rodeo.
Oh, very cool.
A
So
couple of other things that I can't say.
you can't, okay, but we're gonna find out hopefully soon. So, come back to talk about these projects. That'd be absolutely fantastic, Mr. Russo. You do fantastic music, and thank you for making 5 great seasons of Discovery.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night, sir.
You too.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Virgin Stars podcast. Please help me battle the algorithms by liking and subscribing. Be sure to turn for the next episode. Morgan Hampton boards Mothership to discuss Sons of Star Trek from IDW. Till next voyage, travel on.